Okay, so just to briefly introduce myself, my name's Tom Apperley. I'm a senior research fellow at the Centre of Excellence in Game Cultural Studies in Tampere, Finland. I am from New Zealand, and I will be presenting a short talk now that's using some of the research I've been doing on on hot tub streaming on the Twitch platform. Now, this is a kind of relatively new emergent area that got kind of popular last year. And I sort of saw that it was happening. And earlier this year, while I was teaching a class on the aesthetics of and cultures of pornography in gaming, I took some screen caps over a period of about 6 weeks across the end of January to the start of March of different hot tub streamers to kind of get a sense of what was going on there. I didn't really want to watch it too much because it didn't seem that interesting to me. I find Twitch like quite a confusing space anyway to get hang of how it operates. So I guess I need to explain what a hot tub stream is. So Twitch is a streaming platform that promotes itself as being mainly about video games. It has also quite a lot of streams which aren't really about video games at all. They're just other forms of live streaming. The most common one is chat and in real life, and people are doing various things and showing it there. And there's a number of rules and guidelines guiding what kind of content can be shown on Twitch. And this hot tub kind of genre emerged as a kind of, I guess, challenge to some of the like regulatory models around what could be worn in while you were streaming. Whereas they had always allowed people to wear swimwear as long as they were getting in or out of a pool or were in a pool. People decided that they would start to stream from inside a pool inside their house. And this kind of, I guess, setup you see here is like pretty standard. So usually indoors, a kind of pool, and a woman presenter in swimwear and various other items in the background, often referencing kind of long-term in-house jokes, emoji kind of culture, and this mass promotion of other social media within the stream. Now, I've chosen this image because it's a promotional image from a Twitch partner. So it seemed like a legitimate thing to use without getting permission. So if you look back here, you can see that this person has this purple hexagon tick next to their name, which shows that they are a Twitch partner. And this is a kind of big deal in terms of how money is shared between people when they get subscriptions. I'm just thinking I should probably mention that after I'd worked through all the screenshots I'd taken over that 6-week period, I had something like 126 screenshots of 41 different streams. That's kind of what I'm basing my discussion on today. There's obviously a wide variety of different streams within the hot tub streaming space, And I've just captured maybe some of them. There's a lot more work to do to investigate that space, and what I'm sort of presenting here is kind of like a really thin slice. But the key ways that the presenters on Twitch, the live streamers, monetize their streams through currency called bits, which is a sharing currency, which you share in order to encourage, show support, and get attention of the streamer. That's from Twitch's own description of the currency. Every bit given to a streamer gives them 1 cent. There's also subscriptions, which cost $4.99, although this has now changed because they have differential pricing for subscriptions according to country across just about every country in the world. But in the main kind of, I guess, like key markets like USA, it's $4.99 for a subscription, which partners get to share half and half the cost with the Twitch platform. And in the kind of account that people have, their profile on Twitch, the streamers have like space to place a lot of links to their social media and various other kind of presencing kind of medias there. So the first main thing that I noticed that was kind of relatively consistent across the streams that I captured data from was that there was on the interface, there was a tip menu on the screen, which described various acts or things that people would do if people gave them subscriptions or bits, or in some cases also money through some kind of third-party app. And often these tip menus would include things which I guess are kind of like stretch goals. So you can see this one here. Let's see, I think you can see my mouse. It says, "How's me, Daddy?" And this person is trying to earn $5,500 US. And when that goal gets reached, they can change it to another goal. Just below, we have a person offering various services based on how many subscriptions or bits they receive during the course of their stream. So if they get 10, they'll change their swimsuit, or if they get 60, they'll change into a bikini, and 1,500 bits, they'll do a dance. So I did a little bit of a tally up of the streamers and what they were offering to do, just to get an idea about what kind of ways that they were monetizing themselves, what strategies they were using to get people to subscribe, to get people to offer them bits or give them money. And what I discovered was that, out of the 41 accounts, 24 of them had these kind of tip menus that offered different services in exchange for subs, bits, or dollars. And by far the most common two were, I hope that this is kind of visible, but was to have the name written on a whiteboard, balloon, or flotation device, or even the side of the hot tub. So that's one. That's this one here, this orange one. And then the most common was that to perform an exercise called a squat in exchange for bits, subscriptions, or money, which is why I used the subtitle, I don't know squat, because I was pretty kind of surprised by this being like such a ubiquitous monetization strategy within the space. But as you can see, there's like a whole suite of things. I tried to capture everything that was offered by more than one person or more than one account. You can see there's like things like erotic eating, private Discord calls. Also popular is like this thing called a wheel spin, which kind of like a playful roulette kind of game, which is used by a variety of different streamers. And this tip menu is very much in vogue across a whole variety of streaming platforms, including online sex work streaming platforms. So here I've got like a quick screen cap of a tip menu from a online sex worker streaming site called Strip Chat, where you can see actually there's several of the same kind of services offered, like wheel spin, song choice, snap for life, this kind of stuff. So that there's like a clear parallel in this kind of device. So with the spin wheels were created both through like, I guess like third-party apps, which let them sit on the interface, and also physical ones, which are made more or less rudimentary and made by the streamer or other people for them. It kind of creates a playful mechanic where for a small tip or a small amount of money, there's the opportunity to get a variety of different actions out of the streamer. I don't know how well this shows up, but if you can see on this bottom left stream, which is showing a backyard in South Africa, there's like a very elaborate kind of description of the spin wheel, where like, you know, pink is a yoga stretch, red is to bite a raw onion, orange is to do a cartwheel, gold is to dive through a floaty, yellow eat a popsicle, etc., etc. And that these kind of this kind of variety of actions available on the spin wheel are very evocative of the kind of bodily effects which are kind of suggested by the genre. So that there's some which are clearly sexual, but there are also some which involve kind of maybe revulsion, like biting into an onion, or this kind of physical challenge, which may or may not be performed very well. And then this other kind of very predominant element of the streams was this writing of the names of tippers or subscribers or even followers on various items that were visible within the stream, particularly whiteboards, but also you can see some people were writing them on balloons and on their bodies and on especially beloved flotation devices, which are typically phallic and are ridden during the stream. So you can see back here, there's a number of different places where the where it was common for the names to be written, like streamer's forehead, streamer's arm, streamer's leg, etc. Like all at different kinds of price points. And then we come to the squat, which is like a very kind of, I guess, like very physical and corporal kind of exercise, which I guess that most people are familiar with. They might have done one themselves. I certainly remember having done one some years ago. But in this case, squats were monetized at various different price points at various different amounts. There was one person who was offering 250 squats for 50 subs. That was the largest amount of squats on offer. It was quite a lot, but most of the time there were small amounts of squats available for 1 sub or $1 or a small amount of money. And this was one of the common actions for people to be performing during their stream. Now, squat is kind of like a really interesting action. And it's kind of something that I never really thought that I'd end up talking about in my life. But it does seem that squats are kind of something that are important in social media across a number of different kinds of platforms, because they're also like very popular aesthetic presentation in health and fitness influencer kind of streaming, social media, etc. And I found this other example of squat monetization just by coincidence the other day with this free bus trip in some town in Romania. If you can do 20 squats in under 2 minutes in front of this bus ticket dispenser, you get like a free bus ticket. And this is for, to improve the quality of health and the well-being of the people of the city. I thought that was like pretty interesting case of like direct monetization of squats. Now, in these hot tub streams, there's a massive push of the streamers' other social media. This is not always explicitly done on the screen. Sometimes it's done in the chat. Often it's placed in the profile of the streamer. And they link to multiple platforms that have different kinds of content and different kinds of monetization strategies for the streamer. And there's also, within the 41 accounts that I managed to capture data from, there was a number of third-party monetization strategies, which I haven't quite pinned down, but there were 3 accounts that were using other people's content. So there's one account that was running a kind of bloopers stream where they put a reel of people accidentally dropping their phones into the pool or tripping over and falling out of the pool or spilling water on something, etc. So they'd found all this footage and kind of made a loop that they were trying to get people to subscribe to and give them money. And there were also 2 streams which were replaying footage of someone who had retired from hot tub streaming. And this was kind of called reminiscing over this person. And they had very small followings, but even so, I'm not quite sure how to continue to develop or understand that particular practice. So what I saw once I started to look at the social media presence of hot tub streamers was that they were making use of these things called landing pages to kind of create really easy locatable suites to their which could link to all of their content and social media. And part of this was to create like layers of distance between Twitch and other content, or Instagram and other content that they thought they might get judged for. because of the kind of scrutiny which goes on against online sex workers. And that maybe it's also a strategy of managing kind of context collapse, where they want to direct certain people towards certain kinds of content and other people towards other kinds of content. But this multi-platform presence that the streamers maintained was cemented by their body. That their body was the kind of thing that was the consistent presence across the social media, that linked it together, that made it a kind of comprehensible thing. That it was recognizably theirs. And you can see here this kind of strategy where you know, a pin-up style picture has been placed in the background of these landing pages. And you can see here also that the top one, the OnlyFans, is kind of like, I've got, these are screenshots, but they were kind of vibrating back and forth, moving around. And but these bodies that kind of bring these different sites together to create this multi-platform presence, to create these kind of funnels and movement between different kinds of content, and where Twitch is kind of just a front page, or a kind of window into a much larger suite of content, is largely women who have like very clear feminine presentation. There was only very few men and gender fluid people that were captured in my data. And even then, the one person who was clearly presenting as a man, masculine presentation, had a woman in a bikini with him in the hot tub the whole time. That was kind of like this person was a comedian, so this person was their straight person partner. I mean, straight in the terms of comedy. And again, these bodies are almost entirely white. There was only 2 accounts which explicitly identified as having a non-white identity. Mind you, I think that if I looked further into some of the more personal kind of social media, I might find more information about some people. But there's also like a kind of consistently kind of able-bodied kind of presentation as well, where what you're required to do as a streamer is actually like quite physical, and really often involving physical exercise that requires like, yeah, a kind of normative, healthy body. So just to reflect, out of the 41 streamers, 26 of them were just normal streamers, and 15 were Twitch partners, with one shifting from being a normal streamer to a Twitch partner during the course of the capture. So some of their images were later on when they became Twitch partners. And with the people that were Twitch partners, they're all still going strong, but the people who weren't Twitch partners, there's only 9 of the 25 are still going. So 5 have been deleted by the user and 11 have been banned by Twitch. Where when I was looking at them, 2 of the 11 clearly had like content violations at the time, but there's no like clear aesthetic reason for there to be a problem. It just seems that the people who are partnered with Twitch seem to have a better time in this space, even if the people who aren't partnered with Twitch are doing exactly the same thing, they're much more likely to end up in trouble and be banned and so on. So I'm going to just wrap it up there and introduce the next talk, who is Mayara. Are you next?
Yep. So
okay, so Mayara Caetano is a PhD student at Turku University in Finland, and she researches sexuality in games.
yes.
Is that, yeah? Okay, I'll leave it to you then.
Yeah, well, hello everyone. I'm not using the camera now because I think my laptop will just die. So I hope it's okay for now. As Tom said, I'm a doctoral candidate and I'm researching 3D XChat. And I'm gonna talk about the overlapping between streaming, sex game, and online sex work. I'm doing this online ethnography for 2 years now. And I'll start by presenting this game that you might not be aware of. So 3D XChat is developed and published by Sex Game Devil. The representatives are known as Gizmo and Lisa, and they released this game on December 2012. They had some experience with sex games before, but those games were discontinued. So 3DX is an environment online, multiplayer, and also single player. The themes is sex game, a porn game, or adult game. You can only access by subscription, so it's a paid, and there's no trial. One of the requirements is like having a Windows, but of course you have to have a good computer to run the graphics and play. But there are some informations unknown, such as the player bases, where this company is located, the size of their operations, and things like that. So in the few opportunities I had to present my research, I was asked about what people do in this game. And to connect with other presentations in the first day, I would say that in this game, people can role play. So they can impersonate nurses, police officers, professors, escorts. That doesn't mean that they are in the role the entire time they are online. But some groups might expect that or organize their role playing this way. And it is a bit difficult to pinpoint when they are role playing or not, because this can go unannounced and be confusing to differentiate these states of playing or not in a character. And for those unfamiliar with role playing, this can be particularly difficult. But overall, I would say that people just play or perform. More specifically in this game, there's an expectation of sexual play. And in this game, unlike others, the sex play or sex playfulness, it's not something of a subgroup or an extra scene, a modification of the structure. This is the expectation. This is the structure of the game, also to connect to something that was mentioned, that it's what game allows you to do. And I'm gonna explain how the sex is imbued in the structure of playing this game. So in this slide, you're seeing the screen capture I made from my avatar's apartment. This would be the single player. My avatar is this female receiving oral sex from the virtual partner, Bob. And if you look at the left corner, there's a magenta line with the virtual partner, and then in blue, Bob. And in this area gets listed all the avatars, they are paired, and there's a limit of 2. So the maximum of configuration is 3 avatars per sexual act. And there's an X on the side. So if you want to unpair and like stop sex, you just click there and then it's undone. On the other side, you have a sex menu with a select a pose. And when you click there, there is a pop-up menu with all the sexual animations that you can choose in this game. And below there's a sex speed, which is a sliding bar that you can alterate and change the animation and like the sexual interaction that you see. You can go fast with a rabbit, or you can go very slow, almost like stopping with a turtle. Although there are some sounds of sex, you can intensify them by clicking those icons, representations, for example, of a slightly open mouth in mourning. And there's also the ejaculation that works for both female and male bodies in this kind of liquid, whitish representation. And the female avatars can have the addition or not of a strap-on, but you cannot remove the penis of the male avatars, for example. And there's this red button of stop sex. However, I also would like to add that sex is kind of not an obligation. You decide if you want or not to have sex, but it's kind of underlined that for being this game and paying for play, you have some degree of curiosity or initial curiosity on that. But if you are expecting the sex will be easy and readily accessible, then you get frustrated because there are many norms and social regulations about sex and sexuality in this game. So now I'm moving on to the overlaps between this sex game and online sex work. 3DX chat cannot be streamed on popular platforms like Twitch or YouTube because it's a sex game. So they had to find other places to gain visibility. And you can see a screen cap that I took from the official forum where it says the 3DX can be now streamed on Plexstorm, which is a cam streaming sex platform. And it was announced in March 24th, 2018 by Gizmo, which is the person that I mentioned, responsible or official representative of this game. And there you can see the images of the women that would perform and advertise the game and also themselves in this platform. In the yellow, you can see some streamers' performance that I specify of having something connected to games or game culture, like you have the headsets, you have the screen of a laptop with a game on it, you have controllers, you have Pokemon, you have lots of gaming in the background. So those are kind of the scenario, the setting of a game more than addition to the person that is playing. And this streaming was organized to happen on Friday in the end of March, which was like a holiday, so more free time for people to play, know the games, see the streamers, and so on. And this is a screen capture that I also got from the forum from Kitty Quinn, which was one of the females in the previous image. And then you can see how this would be streamed. For example, you have her image in the corner, just like other streaming platforms. There was like 76 people watching at the time this screen was taken. And you see the avatars in a multiplayer with their names on top of it. You can select in the game configurations to eliminate, which would give like another layer of anonymity to the people there. And you have, as Tom mentioned, like the social media added to this screen to promote her for the activity. There was a screen capture in the forum, by the way, in which Zoe had her shirt off and she was streaming at this point with a bra. So in this platform, Plexstorm, is expected that people go like strip, they go naked, they allow people to use vibrators to control them, and all sorts of performance that you can find at a regular campsite. But there's this gaming as a content and also as a way of interacting more than just the performers in other platforms. So the second overlap happened on August 2021, and you can see the image screen capture of a press release that was made available on the website XBiz, which covers the sex industry. And this is the announcement of the partnership between 3DXChat and Lovens, and also the availability on Chaturbate, which is a huge, hugely known cam platform streaming. And the partnership between Lovens and 3DX was made on the beginning of May 2021. So it took a couple of months to this official additional announcement. But for example, now you can integrate the sex toy from Lovens specifically on the game and control it inside the game. So it's an addition to the structure in this level. I would also add Lovens is the owner of the tipping system of their products, and they are integrated until now in at least 22 cam sites, platforms, and at least 2 games. So I selected 2 passages of this press release to talk and present to you, and I'm gonna read it. We are delighted with this wonderful news and very happy for those players who will now be able to combine the pleasure of playing 3DXChat with making money, the rep Gizmo said. Beyond that, the streamers on Chaturbate, which is certainly one of the majors in the market, will provide 3DXChat with more exposure and attract new players. Another quote. We are happy to see other platforms introducing gamification and launching game streaming services. We at Lovens have high hopes for the future of gaming market and are actively developing in that direction, CEO Dan Lewis said. 3DXChat is superbly designed game with huge potential, and I'm personally very glad that more people will have a chance to learn about it. So from those quotations, I would highlight this association between the pleasure of playing with the pleasure of making money, being on this major market platform Chaturbate and gaining exposure and attracting new players. Also the desire for love hands and the high hopes for the gamification and the game streaming, and also their own products with this gaming market for an upcoming future. So to conclude my talk, apparently there is an interest of the companies on the possibilities to use the game not only as a content but also as a platform where playing is a live advertisement of products and services, and also from the players or the streamers, the workers themselves. So sex online was and will always be one of the hot commodities. However, among the many questions I have is this, what happens with playing and also what happens with sexuality when things are becoming way more transactional and monetized and gamified. And also there is, I guess I was surprised to see how things change fast and they kind of spread and the overlaps. So I'm ending my talk now, and Maria, please.
Thank you, Maya. Shall you introduce me, Tom, or?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, great. I'll try to get my slides working meanwhile.
Maybe you can put your camera on and wave that book around. Maria Ruotsalainen is a doctoral candidate at the University of Jyväskylä, Finland. Her doctoral thesis focuses on the reception of Overwatch Esports and the role of gender and nationality within it. She's the author with 2 other people of Modes of Esports Engagement in Overwatch, which you have a copy of with you, right, Maria?
Always. So
yeah.
I'm sorry for doing this. I feel so bad, but I'm always like told that I don't market stuff enough. So now I'm marketing stuff.
So this is a open access book on Overwatch. I'm going to put the link in the chat in a second so that Maria can start her talk. Thanks very much, Maria.
Thank you, Tom. And just to say, it's a great book that I'm one of the editors. So we have a bunch of great writers in it. And that's why I really want to get some attention for their excellent work. So let's get started with the talk of today. And I want to ask, are you seeing my slides? Because I'm always very confused with Zoom.
Not
See
yet.
them yet.
Okay, so let's try again. Does it work now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So the theme of our panel has been the sort of the way buddies exist within relation to games, playfulness, streaming, and the monetization of this all. And I'm moving a bit different directions from the two earlier talkers by talking about the way played and playing buddies are present in Overwatch esports. To contextualize this just a little bit, this talk draws from longer research that I've been doing approximately 2 years about Overwatch and Overwatch esports. This is also research my PhD dissertation that I'll be defending in August is based on. And during this period, I've been systematically engaging with the field of Overwatch esports in multiple ways. And these ways include playing the game itself, both alone and as part of an amateur teams. I've been reading a number of discussion forums daily during this time, watching esports broadcast for 2 years. Most of the major Overwatch esports broadcasts I watched either live or as recording. I've been watching a number of professional player streams, and I have visited different esports tournaments. Given the fact that my research has been focusing on one particular esports, Overwatch, is that sort of central to my research is the Overwatch League. So Overwatch is a team-based first-person shooter published by Blizzard Entertainment. And unlike many esports, it doesn't have this kind of tournament structure, but it has a franchised esports league that is fully controlled and owned by the developer of the game, Blizzard Entertainment. What this means is that there is also a higher than normal control over the player activities within the esports scenes. So when the one actor takes a very tight hold of the IP and can basically just lay out the rules of how the players are expected to behave, it sort of changes the dynamic of the esports ecosystem within which this particular esports operates. So if you look at the case of Overwatch, what makes it really interesting in relation to looking at the ways the players navigate within it is that the players are, for instance, very limited in the ways they are allowed to present themselves and be present in different platforms. And simultaneously with esports players, there is the continuous, and I would argue growing need to be present in multiple platforms and finding multiple ways of making revenue. So most commonly, this means that a lot of esports players both play actively in a team, either get paid as salaried players or tournament winnings, quite often both, and they often have their personal streams as well through which they make money, and also maintain presence within the or like maintain presence for the audience. So if they get cut from their team or if their esports career comes to an halt, they still have a way of making a living by doing what they've been doing, so playing the video game. However, in the case of Overwatch League, the players were always limited in the ways they could engage with the streaming, for instance, in Twitch. So in the beginning, Overwatch League was in a Twitch as well, but later on it would be on YouTube. And for instance, the Overwatch League players were not allowed to play with more than one other Overwatch League player in their Twitch streams, because it would start looking too much like that is an Overwatch League product that they are creating by playing together with more than one other Overwatch League player. So this would, of course, affect the way that they could monetize their own streams. They would also not be allowed to stream during the time or 1 hour before or after of official Overwatch League games. So they are not competing from the same audience. These are just some examples that the players were expected and are still expected to behave while being contracted to Overwatch League, and how they have to navigate through this rule while maintaining this kind of a multi-platform presence. In addition to this, there is they have the constant pressure to perform within the league, and this is heightened again in Overwatch in comparison to some other esports, because it is owned and controlled by one entity, and there is very little to compete against those jobs that are afforded by that entity, and there is no player union. So what is very common in Overwatch is that player careers are relatively short. Players get cut, and new players, upcoming stars, young players are signed in and contracted for these teams. So the players are navigating in a situation where they have a lot of pressure on their own performance, and yet they cannot freely create this kind of a plan B or sustain this kind of plan B of making sure that if their esports careers fail, they have their streaming careers to fall back to. Furthermore, it is not just the kind of limit of time and the actual presence in the streaming or other platforms that are to an extent controlled by the Overwatch League and by the developer of the game and the publisher or like the maintainer of the Overwatch League, because Overwatch League is also branded in a very particular and certain way, which means that it is not only about telling players when they can play, but also how should they appear when they play. So this is part of a research I did in a very early on when the Overwatch League launched in 2018, where I looked at the way this mainstream media discussed about the Overwatch League in the United States, and they mainly discussed it through 3 different discursive frames, which were the professionalization of esports, traditional sports, and painting game culture as the other. What this means is that the Overwatch League was seen largely positive in the mainstream media, which is quite different that gaming and esport has been generally painted on. But it was seen positive due to its professionalization, which meant that it can be a business, that it can have a profit to it, and that it also can through this kind of an angle of being a business and having a profit to it, it can also create this kind of a neoliberal subject that can create profit with it. So it was seen as something that might have a positive influence on young people, because it also shows that gaming can be something profitable. The other way it was framed was through traditional sports, and this was also very visible the way it framed the masculinities were framed within it. So there were, for instance, stories about how these players do not look like your everyday nerds, and they look like normal young men that could even have a girlfriend. And I want to do a disclaimer here that even though I'm talking about like esports masculinities, I'm not blind to the presence of other genders within the esports sphere, but I'm at the same time I argue that the limited presence of other genders is also something that is needed to sustain these certain kind of masculinities. So I'm going to come back to that later. But my research is a lot about women players, for instance, as well. I'm just not going to talk about that part so much today. So whilst the sports and professionalization, whilst esports is seen as something positive, as long as it maintains this kind of likeness to traditional sports and has this kind of an potential of being a lucrative business, it can only be positive as long as it is something other than traditional game culture. So a lot of these traditional media stories that I examined, it was 42 in total, made it clear that that esports can only be a positive phenomenon, as they framed it as a positive phenomenon, if it distances itself clearly as from game culture and others game culture from itself. So game culture was continuously depicted as something different, potentially dangerous, as the other. And the representations of game culture relied heavily on stereotypes about what game culture is. So what does that mean in terms of the kind of, if you look at the playing bodies and players bodies and the kind of subjectivities that are created within this esports ecosystem, is that they don't only have the pressure of perform in very precarious situations, in very precarious career that can end at any moment, where they have very little player rights, where they have very limited opportunities or possibilities to maintain their multi-platform presence that is at the same time expected from them. But also they are expected to perform certain kind of particular kind of sport masculinity, athletic masculinity, to reinstate hegemonic masculinity within the constraints of esports. And like when you look at the discussions about player burnouts during the first, but also the later seasons of Overwatch League, it is no wonder that they were constant. There was constantly players burning out, quitting, or being unable to compete. But usually what these discussions would only refer to would be the pressure the players feel when they have to perform within the scene of competitive gaming. And that is something that Tom Brock writes extensively about, the need to continuously to maintain this kind of certain kind of masculine identity through the performance and through the metrics that the game, and in the case of organized esports, also the team and the coaches give back. And it is indeed clear, if you look at the discussions about player burnout, that the community, as Tom Brock put it, the community naturalizes the anxiety that metrics generate by holding one another individually responsible for overcoming the psychological and physiological constraints that market conditions generate. So a lot of the discussions, like audience discussions, for instance, and the community discussions, are that players burning out would question the players' individual activities around the gaming and how they could be better. So how could they, for instance, be better, they get better care of their own physical strength by going to gym, or sometimes it would be discussed more like the team could get a mental coach. But it was also seen that as these players are being paid for doing something so great than playing a video game, they should just suck it up and take it in a way, because they're already in a kind of seen it to be in a kind of an advantageous and privileged position. But in addition to having to keep up the player performance, as said, they also have to keep up the performance of certain kind of masculinities, which is now heightened by the fact that they have to perform not only this kind of gamer masculinity, but hand in hand together that the kind of an e-athlete masculinity, which puts up all new set of pressures to their way they need to present their bodies, for instance, but also the way they need to perform themselves in their individual streams, in addition to their official performances of the athlete in the officially held tournaments. So once we establish that this is kind of the condition of the of the neoliberal subject and the neoliberal masculinity within the esports, what I wanted to look into, and I've been looking into, is also like what kind of forms of resistance there is within the Overwatch esports for this. And I'm not going to talk about all the forms that there could be. So I think like a player union could be one, but it's hasn't happened so far. But I want to sort of also here think back the earlier talks of today, and reflect on light of them about like not only the kind of very concrete things that can be done, but also this kind of how can we imagine otherwise. So as Irene Fupara-Manuel talked about, that it's about possibilities of imagining otherwise. So I think that plays also like great role within the way these esports subjectivities and masculinities are created, is like what kind of masculinities can you imagine and how can you be otherwise than just in the way of the kind of for instance, the e-athlete performing traditional masculinity. And just let me know, by the way, Tom, if I'm running out of time, because I'm taking a bit more than I was thinking I will. So one of the things that I looked into with my colleague Tanja Välisalo was this kind of an idea of what if, what we noticed is that the fans, and also the players of the Overwatch League didn't always thought of themselves as into terms of kind of an e-athlete. They didn't draw their representations of the self or their own subjectivities from the kind of an imaginary of sports, but rather they used anime as an important source of imagining what they can be. And in the slide you can see there is the first one is a tweet from a former Overwatch League caster Monte Cristo, where he actually comments on this kind of an way that the fans and players talk about Overwatch as it would be anime. And Monte Cristo says that as we approach another season of Overwatch League, I would like to take a moment to remind everyone the following. Overwatch League is not an anime. If someone is bad, then they get cut. There are no redemption arcs. Villains can and do often win. As a response to that, and this is actually the Overwatch League game I visited myself in 2019 in California, Los Angeles, and it was in that game that one of the teams, Los Angeles Valiant, talked before their game start in the States. One of their players talked about that as a direct response to that caster to Monte Cristo, that no, Overwatch is anime. We can have our anime ending. We can win. Surprises happen. This kind of narrative and heroic story arc, they can become reality. Well, unfortunately, it didn't come reality in that day, and Valiant lost the game as was expected. But this kind of fun vocabulary and imagining otherwise, then through sport, then through business, was and is present in Overwatch esports. And Overwatch is anime also changes, for instance, what is kind of an idealized masculinity within the Overwatch esports, and traits such as cute and adorable, which are often seen as feminine, are coded as feminine, are actually coded as desirable masculine elements amongst the fans and viewers of Overwatch League. The influence of anime aesthetics to desired masculinity, it's something that is also known as kawaii masculinity, very prominent in Korea and Japan. In South Korea and Japan, and their cuteness and boyishness are sort of seen like desired trait for men. And this is very visible amongst the sort of fan art and fan discussions of Overwatch League players, but also the Overwatch both Overwatch League players and fans. So here we could see as something that could create a form of resistance. But alas, as it was also talked earlier today, capitalism has a tendency to catch up on this quite fast. So if in the beginning of this presentation, we saw the very sportified way of presenting the Overwatch League, I'm gonna just show you super quick 10 seconds if this worked. This is how Overwatch League was presented in the 1.5 years later, after this kind of an idea of seeing it as an anime was already very prominent. So this is, I don't know if you can hear the sound, but that is just basically and playoff team announcement by the Overwatch League. So this kind of anime aesthetic, so nobody would argue that this is a very sportified aesthetic. This is an anime aesthetic. I don't know if you heard the sound, but that highlights it even. Nobody would argue that this is sportified aesthetic. So, and the developer and the maintainer of League sort of catches up very fast on these different ways the fans and the players frame the product. And then it becomes also it also becomes commodified. So that kind of takes away its potential of being something that resists the creation of the neoliberal subject. And that is indeed something that Forges and Orlando talk about when they talk about neoliberal masculinity within the esports scene. They talk about integration in relation to CSGO, but this is definitely true here as well, that this kind of variations from this kind of traditional masculinity or even geek masculinity are allowed as long as they function for the benefit of marketability and performance. So we can see here as well that confirms that this sort of confirms the player again as the neoliberal subject, and there is very little resistant power left in the idea of Overwatch as anime. I have one more slide. I might be a little bit over time, but I'll just finish up quick. And this is another case of resistance, and this is highly problematic because this sort of shows a way that players can be resistant to the subjectivation they face and commodification they face in their esports career, but it is definitely not in an unproblematic way. So around, I think it was 2018 or 2019, all the Overwatch League players were denied using Pepe the Frog in any of their social media or any of their social media accounts, as it was then started to discuss that it has the relation to alt-right and far-right. At the same time, a lot of these players saw it as this kind of a gamer identity thing. And so a lot of the players were forced to remove Pepe the Frog from all their social media. And they did so, but there was also these cases, most known the case of the Fran, that when the player first joined Overwatch League and removed all the references to Pepe the Frog, as soon as they would sort of leave, they would add all these references, and it would constantly work as this kind of an show of kind of a rebellion against the league and the neoliberal subjectivity suggest. However, this is highly problematic subjectivity because it has its own connotations to alt-right, to far-right, to sexism, to racism, to homophobia, and etc., etc., etc. So it kind of leaves us in the very uncomfortable situation where the sort of unlike the visible forms of resistance and rebellion for these wanting to escape the kind of a neoliberal masculinity is the far right, which is not good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Maria. I'm not 100% sure about what time Professor Pasonen's presentation will be starting. Do we have, can someone just fill us in about whether we should talk for a bit or whether we should give the forum to Susanna?
We were aiming for 1:30, but if Susanna's okay with it, maybe we can take one or two questions here. Fabulous, thanks, Susanna. So yeah, let's have a couple of questions maybe.
Okay, so I saw that there were some in the chat. Maybe Maria, there was one that was just directed at you a moment ago from Dean. You mentioned the short careers of these players. Have you encountered any data about what they go on to after leaving or being forced to leave their jobs? Is it primarily continuing streaming?
I think that kind of data is still very limited, but actually a really good question it would be to start gathering systematic that kind of data now. What I do know that a lot of them do not go into streaming. So unless they have already established audience when they were professional players, it's not that easy to then continue as a streamer afterwards, which also sort of highlights the importance of being able to maintain at the moment in the current ecosystem. Like ideally it might not be like this, but in the current ecosystem there is this huge importance of being able to maintain this kind of streamer persona in addition to the esports persona if you really want to continue to that route later on. Of course, a lot of them go into like coaching or other kind of positions in esports organizations. So I think that's a really common way as well. And most of people we have in the like management, and a lot of people we have in the management, a lot of people we have in the coaching are former players.
Mayara.
Yeah, I think I can add to that, for example, in Overwatch contenders, South America, people who left the Overwatch, they went playing professionally for Valorant, for example. So they might use the skills they develop in some games to others, if it's applicable or not.
That is a great
Beyond,
addition.
like going to streaming in other positions on esports, or just go like out of completely and continue their studies and things like that are put normally on hold.
Yeah, that's actually a good addition, that there is not only this transition for a new game, but there's a constant hunt for what is going to be the next big game. So that also adds to kind of this like a precarious positions these players are, because they have to be guessing, is Valorant going to be big? So should I be putting, because they have to start when it's in closed beta, ideally open beta the latest. So they don't know yet if it's going to be big when they start grinding it. So that is also a great point, that there is these transitions between games to games. And oftentimes there is also this rush when the new esports game is coming. So a lot of players that have quit their career in other esports or feel that they are not getting anywhere or that esports is dying, they transition to a new esport. So that happens a lot as well. Thanks, Mike.
So I see here there's a question from Maya from Jack. How much interaction do you have with other players in front of the screen? Do people talk on Discord when playing, for example?
Yes, there is a chat inside of the game that you can use for having extensive conversations and also sexting, but also people also use Discord. So there is a spread of platforms. Some people have profiles for their avatars on Twitter and they produce content, they have blogs, they work designing spaces. So there's a little bit of everything. Depends on what kind of boundaries and relationships they might want to build inside the game, outside of the game, in their characters or not.
Thanks, Maya. So I think that, oh, Maria, you've got something.
Sorry if I have time. I just wanted to comment. There was a question from Rob earlier in the chat asking about and linking to other papers as well. So if anyone else wants to comment, so if you don't mind, I'll just quickly comment on this one. Asking about the pro players, if they're contractually obliged to post or promote themselves in certain ways in social media. So a lot of the times these contracts, we don't see them, like, but there was this in Overwatch League, I think season 1, there was this handbook that was leaked, and Mia Siutila from Finland looked into that, researcher from Turku as well. And she looked into that, and one of the clauses was that the players have to be ready to be in front of camera at any hour. So they have to be prepared to have cameras in their living spaces, like a reality TV kind of thing. So obviously it seems they are, and in that like quite heinous ways. Yeah. So that's crazy, right?
Yeah, to that I can informally add that there's a tendency to people who want to be part of this ecosystem to manage their personal and online presence extensively to a point that don't be controversial, don't make something that can go badly for you. And some groups, some women, I know that, for example, you have to send them questions if you want to make questions even for research, and those questions will be evaluated by the team, and then if they are allowed, then you can talk with them, otherwise not. And this can happen even though they don't have any kind of working contract or relation. So it's very tricky.
Right, well, might just hand things over to the coordinator of the day to get on with the schedule.